Monday, May 25, 2020. It was Memorial Day, a national holiday. For most Americans, it was a day of barbecues, family gatherings, and the unofficial start of summer. But in the heart of Minnesota, as the sun dipped low in the evening sky, one encounter would unravel the fabric of trust between a community and its police force. George Perry Floyd Jr., 46 years old, woke up in his apartment in South Minneapolis. He had been trying to build a new chapter of his life here, leaving behind the struggles of Houston's 3rd Ward where he grew up. To friends, he was Big Floyd, a towering man at 6'4", but known more for his warmth than his size. He was a father, a mentor to younger men in his neighborhood, and someone who, despite past mistakes, was searching for stability. That evening, George Floyd made his way to Cup Foods, a small corner store at the intersection of 38th Street and Chicago Avenue. The streets were alive with holiday energy, cars humming past, people strolling in the early summer warmth. Floyd bought a pack of cigarettes and handed the cashier a $20 bill. The young employee looked at it, hesitated, and believed it might be fake. At exactly 8:01 p.m., the store clerk dialed 911. The recording later played in court carried a detached, routine tone, someone gave us a counterfeit bill. He's sitting on his car outside. He's awfully drunk, and he's not in control of himself. Those words, spoken almost casually, triggered a chain reaction that would ripple through the world. At 8:08 p.m., 2 officers responded, Thomas Lane and J. Alexander Queuing. Their patrol car rolled up quietly. Body-worn cameras were already recording as they approached a blue Mercedes SUV parked along the curb. Inside sat George Floyd and 2 others. Lane approached the driver's side, hand already on his gun. He shouted commands, his voice sharp, cutting through the humid night air. "Show me your hands. Put your hands on the wheel." Startled, Floyd raised his palms instantly, his voice trembling with fear. "Please, officer. I didn't do nothing." Lane holstered his weapon but pulled Floyd from the car. The towering man complied, already handcuffed within moments. His wrists pinched behind his back. Floyd's anxiety escalated. He told the officers repeatedly that he wasn't resisting. He explained he was claustrophobic, that he couldn't breathe properly. At 8:14 p.m., bystanders began to gather. Some recognized Floyd, others were drawn in by the flashing patrol lights and raised voices. A teenager lifted her phone, pressing record as the tension escalated. Officers tried to force Floyd into the back seat of their squad car. His large frame shifted uneasily. He panicked, pleading with them not to shove him inside. His voice cracked. "Please, I'm not that kind of guy. I can't breathe in there." Witnesses murmured. Cell phones clicked on. The atmosphere thickened with unease. At 8:19 p.m., Derek Chauvin arrived. A veteran officer with nearly 19 years on the force, Chauvin carried himself with the authority of someone used to control. He walked directly into the situation, unhurried, his face unreadable. Within minutes, Floyd was pulled to the ground on the pavement. Then came the moment that would change history. Chauvin placed his left knee across Floyd's neck. The seconds ticked forward. At 8:20 p.m., Floyd cried out, his voice desperate. "I can't breathe. Please, I can't breathe." The words cut through the night. Again and again, more than 20 times, he pleaded. His voice carried fear, confusion, and the primal instinct to survive. Nearby, 19-year-old Darnella Frazier, clutching her phone, steadied her hands and began to record. Her video would later circle the globe. At 8:21 p.m., Floyd continued to struggle. He gasped, his voice hoarse. "Everything hurts. My stomach hurts. My neck hurts. Please, I can't breathe." Spectators shouted at the officers. One woman, trained in CPR, begged them to check his pulse. "You're killing him," another bystander yelled. At 8:23 p.m., Floyd's pleas turned to cries for his mother. His voice softened, breaking hearts around him. "Mama, Mama, I'm through." To the crowd, it was unbearable. To Chauvin, it seemed to change nothing. His face remained blank, his sunglasses perched atop his head, his hand casually in his pocket as his weight bore down on the man beneath him. Officer Chu Tao stood between the growing crowd and his fellow officers, waving people back. "Get on the sidewalk," he ordered. But the witnesses refused to be silent. Their voices rose louder, echoing against the nearby storefronts. At 8:25 p.m., George Floyd's movement slowed. His body went limp, face pressed into the asphalt. A bystander's voice trembled, "He's not responsive, man. He's not moving." Still, Chauvin's knee remained. At 8 minutes and 46 seconds into the restraint, silence fell. Floyd's life was slipping away before the world's eyes. By some estimates, Chauvin's knee stayed in place for over 9 minutes. At 8:27 p.m., paramedics arrived. They checked for a pulse, found none, and lifted Floyd onto a stretcher. His large frame hung lifeless. Witnesses cursed, some sobbing, others recording in disbelief. The ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing into the distance. Inside, medics worked frantically, but it was too late. At Hennepin County Medical Center, George Floyd was pronounced dead. On the street corner, the bystanders stood in stunned silence. A man's voice, caught on a recording, muttered words that would haunt the city. "They just killed him, man." That night, Minneapolis police released a statement. It read, "Man dies after medical incident during police interaction." It mentioned nothing about a knee on the neck. Nothing about the crowd begging for mercy. Nothing about 9 minutes and 29 seconds of suffering. But the video was undeniable. By midnight, Darnella Frazier's footage had spread across social media. By morning, millions had watched it. George Floyd's final words, "I can't breathe," were echoing around the world. Yet in that first night, Minneapolis was only beginning to feel the ground shift. Because this wasn't just about George Floyd. It wasn't just about Derek Chauvin. It was about decades of mistrust, years of unresolved wounds, and a community's breaking point captured on camera. The city was about to erupt. The George Floyd case was about to explode into one of the largest civil rights movements in modern history. But before there could be justice, there would be fire, fury, and a courtroom battle that tested the very limits of the law. The morning of May 26, 2020, the streets of Minneapolis woke up to fire. Overnight, the video of George Floyd's final moments had traveled across phones, televisions, and news outlets with lightning speed. By sunrise, his words, "I can't breathe," were no longer just a cry for help. They had become a rallying cry for millions. At the intersection of 38th Street and Chicago Avenue, people began to gather. They brought flowers, posters, and candles. The pavement where Floyd had taken his last breath became a memorial, and within hours it turned into a protest. By May 27th, thousands of voices filled the streets, chanting, "Say his name. George Floyd. No justice. No peace." The tension was palpable. The air smelled of smoke from burning dumpsters, and storefront windows were shattered. Minneapolis was no longer a quiet Midwestern city. It was the epicenter of a global movement. News helicopters hovered above as the 3rd Precinct police station was surrounded. Officers retreated inside as the crowd swelled. By the night of May 28th, flames rose from the building itself. The image of a burning police station in America spread across the globe, shocking and inspiring in equal measure. But amid the protests and the anger, legal gears were turning. On May 29th, Derek Chauvin was arrested and charged with 3rd-degree murder and 2nd-degree manslaughter. The charges would later be elevated, but for the moment, it was the first signal that accountability might come. The months that followed were a whirlwind. Across the United States, and far beyond, millions marched in solidarity. From London to Sydney, from Lagos to Tokyo, George Floyd's name was painted on walls, shouted in rallies, and whispered in prayer. The movement became one of the largest civil rights protests in modern history. Yet in Minneapolis, the real battle was only beginning, the courtroom. On March 8, 2021, jury selection began for the trial of Derek Chauvin. 4 weeks, 12 men and women would carry the weight of a nation's grief on their shoulders. Every camera in America turned toward Hennepin County Courthouse. Inside, prosecutors laid out a simple but devastating case. They played the 9-minute and 29-second video again and again. Each time, the silence in the courtroom was suffocating. Jurors stared, some wiping tears, as Floyd's voice echoed through the speakers, "I can't breathe." The prosecution called witness after witness. Darnella Frazier, the teenager who filmed the video, took the stand. Her voice trembled as she recalled, "It wasn't right. He was suffering. He was in pain." A firefighter, Genevieve Hansen, testified through tears that she begged to help but was refused. "I would have given medical attention. I tried. They didn't let me." The defense, led by attorney Eric Nelson, painted a different picture. They argued Floyd had underlying health issues, heart disease, hypertension, and that drugs in his system contributed to his death. They argued Chauvin was doing his duty as trained, that he followed police protocol. But the prosecution countered with one expert after another. Dr. Martin Tobin, a world-renowned pulmonologist, broke down the video frame by frame. He explained how the position of Chauvin's knee made it impossible for Floyd to breathe. A healthy person subjected to what Mr. Floyd was subjected to would have died, Tobin said. April 19, 2021. Closing arguments. The courtroom was silent as prosecutor Steve Schleicher faced the jury. His voice cut through the air, "Believe your eyes. What you saw, you saw. This wasn't policing. This was murder." The jury deliberated for 10 hours over 2 days. Outside the courthouse, the world waited. Minneapolis was tense. Businesses boarded up. The National Guard deployed. People feared the outcome could either ignite peace or chaos. April 20th, 2021. The verdict was read. Derek Chauvin sat motionless as Judge Peter Cahill spoke. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of unintentional second-degree murder, guilty of third-degree murder, guilty of second-degree manslaughter." The words rang like a thunderclap. Chauvin's eyes flicked across the courtroom, his jaw tight, but his body still. Outside, the crowd erupted. Cheers, tears, and chants filled the air. Strangers embraced. Some dropped to their knees in prayer. For a moment, there was relief, a sense that justice had prevailed. But beneath the celebration, deeper questions lingered. The George Floyd case forced America to confront uncomfortable truths. Police use of force. Qualified immunity shielding officers from accountability. Centuries of racial inequality boiled over in 9 minutes and 29 seconds of video. Lawsuits and reforms followed. Cities re-evaluated chokeholds, restraint policies, and funding models for police departments. Floyd's family received a historic civil settlement of $27 million from the city of Minneapolis. Yet the larger question remained: could one verdict truly change a system? George Floyd's name would never be forgotten. His mural painted across city walls. His words, "I can't breathe," etched into history. His death, captured by a teenager's camera, sparked the largest protest movement in a generation. And yet, the tragedy lay in the fact that it took a man's life, broadcast to the world, to force the nation's hand. Here at Crimes Uncoded, we're not just telling crime stories. The perfect murder, and the law that couldn't touch it.